Yeah. Welcome to the room where queens rise, where voices get louder, where power meets purpose. This is Linda Love Talks. Started with a vision, fire in my soul, turned every setback into solid gold. Crown on my mindset, thrown in my lane, speaking true louder, breaking every chain.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Linda Love Talks, the podcast where we explore powerful conversations with leaders, thinkers, and innovators from all around the world. I'm your host, Linda Love. Today's episode is titled Chicano Studies and the Long Histories of Latinos in America. We explore the deep historical roots, the cultural contributions, and ongoing impact of Latino communities in the United States. From history and identity to education and social progress, this discussion highlights why understanding Chicano studies and Latino history is essential to understanding the American story. Joining us today is none other than Chicano studies expert Pedro Ramirez-Lopez-Robledo, a professional and thought leader engaged in conversations around leadership, education, and the evolving social and cultural landscape shaping our communities today. Pedro brings valuable perspectives about Latino heritage and history, and of course, identity. And also, what the historical journey has taken place in the United States that has helped shape generations of Latinos across the United States. This is a conversation about history, culture, identity, and the voices that continue to shape the future of America. So sit back, tune in, and join me in welcoming Pedro Ramirez Lopez Robledo to Linda Love Talks. But
Okay.
thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's Linda Love Talks. It's season 4. I have Pedro Ramirez here today, and I'm so ecstatic to have him here because we're going to talk about something that, believe it or not, with all the education that I have, I'm still very new to me. So we're going to get right into the questions. What initially drew you to Chicano studies, and how was your perspective evolved over the years?
Well, I grew up during the 60s. I was like 10 years old, when I saw Martin Luther King uh, being assassinated, Robert Kennedy. I remember that vividly and distinctly. And I remember John Kennedy as a little boy. I didn't know what was happening. I was about 4 or 5. But, soon I realized that I was Chicano, and it was inculcated into me by my father. You know, my father would stop me at stop signs when I was in kindergarten. He asked me, "How do you spell stop?" Right? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And he goes, "Well, look at the letters." I go, STOP. Then he say, "What are you?" And I'd say, "I'm Pedro." And he goes, "Yeah, but what are you? Are you Mexican? Are you white? Are you?" I go, I'm Mexican. He goes, "What else are you?" I go, "Mexican twice." So
Hmm.
he'd say, "You're Chicano, and don't forget that." And I'd be like, "Okay." So then he asked me, "What are you?" "Chicano." "What else?" "Mexican."
Hmm.
Okay. And I didn't really understand. He didn't explain to me what that meant, but he developed then and there an interest uh, for me in my culture. And then he would take us back to Mexico City every 3 to 5 years, to visit relatives. We had relatives in Mexico City. And at a young age, I participated in walkouts. When the East LA walkouts happened right after Rosa Parks did her sit in on the bus, they happened, the influence would happen in East LA. And they influenced our little town of Fresno, California. We were watching this, we were hearing about it. And when I was in 8th grade, we walked out, all the Chicanos out of our schools. And it was because, the storyline went like this. If you got into a fisticuffs on campus or you got into trouble, you know, sometimes you were not to blame, right? And if a teacher happened to come around, if it was a white student and a brown student, or white or black student fighting, they would blame without question the brown or black student, and they would suspend them from school. And so this was ongoing, and we were being suspended left and right out of school. So, we decided, a group of us, there was a headliner group, parents that helped, that, walk out, do what they're doing in East LA. And our teachers didn't understand it, but
Mhm.
we did. I bought my little coat and I put Chicano power patches all over myself and little pyramids. And,
That's
I
cool.
was yeah, it was cool. I was a
Yeah.
proud little boy, a little
Mhm.
teenager.
Mhm.
And so that really developed an interest in identity. When I went to high school, I took Mexican American, they offered Mexican American studies, which to me was great. I'd love to study about Mexico's history and how it intermeshes with U.S. history. And so then I thought, well, I want to go to college. Not quite sure how I get there, but I want to
Mhm.
go. And I ended up going to Fresno State, uh, Cal State University, Fresno. And I thought, well, in high school I read these books. I thought I want to be a lawyer, right? And it said major in English. So that's what I did. I majored in English. And through that, uh, I got English teachers that were really interested in me. They were Jewish professors.
Mhm.
Dr. Jean Bluestein, Lillian Faderman. She wrote a book with a famous poet named Omar Salinas. They call him the Godfather of Chicano poetry, about Chicanos and literature, and poetry. And and so they took an interest in me. They wanted to develop my writing skills because, unbeknownst to me, I thought my writing skills were up to par, but they weren't.
Right.
And so they helped me,
Mhm.
And then we had a department that was ethnic studies, which I didn't know universities had those ethnic studies departments until I went to a summer bridge program where they introduced us to all the different resources we had on campus and departments. And I took a Chicano literature class, and I fell in love. I was like,
Nice.
wow, this is about us, and
Yes.
about me. One of the things that happened to me when I first went to Fresno State was a friend of mine, a friend, colleague asked me, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name is Peter Ramirez."
Mhm.
And he goes, "What's your real name?" I go, "My real name is Pedro Ramirez." He goes, "I'm going to call you Pedro." That's the day it became Pedro, to my
Wow.
friends and to my
Mhm.
wife. My wife knew me as Pedro when I met her in San Francisco. I transferred to San Francisco later on, and I took her home, and they called my family called me Peter. They said, "Hey, Pete, Peter." What? And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Who's Peter? Pete? Pedro?" I go, "That's me."
That's hilarious.
So it was a growth process, throughout my
Yeah.
upbringing. Yeah,
So
yeah.
fascinating. Can you explain the significance of the Chicano movement and how its legacy still continues to live today?
It's still alive, and we see it more. The importance of it more than ever. But really, the Chicano literature legacies. There's a guy named Tomas Ibarra Frausto, and I just had his name in my brain.
Mhm.
Another co-writer that wrote a book canonizing Chicano lit.
Mm.
And,
Okay.
and what they do, yeah, I mean that's a very important move, uh, uh, because this is out of Stanford University. Uh, because what it does is it ties us to our ancestral heritage. In other words, to when the Spanish came and began what I call an invasion in the Americas, right, with the other Euro groups. And so they canonized this and tied us to that literature, right? Joseph Sumner is the other guy. Joseph Sumner's and Tomás Ibarra Frausto. They're both deceased now, but they wrote an important book about Chicano literature. That legacy is carried on because since that time, there's been a system of oppression placed upon people who are ethnically mixed, who are maybe not mixed, indigenous. They were subjugated to reservations here in the United States, in Canada, and in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
They're relegated to the hills. A lot of them just ran away and said, "We don't need your help. We're going to live on our own. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to live on our own." And so that is a form of you know, of course, oppression. But along the way, there are groups that rose out of those groups who resisted. You know, the Mexican Revolution was very much an indigenous proletariat people's movement. And that, of course, really that period of time inculcated uh, that belief and thought in the Mexican Republic, but also here in the United States, in the belly of the beast, as they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so, you know, uh, the literature doesn't really get its recognition till the 40s, till it develops, in the 40s, the last phase of it, which is Chicano literature. There's like six different movements along the way, and the last one is a Chicano, where Chicanos now, some maybe don't work in the field, so can send their kids to school,
Mm-hmm.
maybe work as a mechanics, barbers, or whatever, send their kids, and they have this consciousness. They've seen certain things that just are not right, and so they began to write, and they began to study, and they began to, become doctors, lawyers, and dentists, and scientists, even. And so, of course, the writers emerge out of those groups, and so it begins there. The importance of it is even today. You see uh, 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 people uh, again beginning to look at us as if we're the outsiders. Because when
Yes.
they accuse like one person,
Mm-hmm.
like the person from El Salvador. I can't remember his name now. Do you remember his name? I forget his name.
I
Uh,
don't have it. I was
uh,
saying it so many
so
times
was
in my
I.
conversation, and all of a sudden I have completely blanked out.
It goes away. Yeah, the same with me. But you know who we're talking about, right?
Yes, who
He
was
has
sent
like a
over.
rapper name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when they do that to us, you know, it just amalgamates our force and power on this continent to resist those things. And we're getting help from those who know that that's not the American way. That's not what we're fighting for, to create a republic that includes everybody.
Exactly. And
uh,
everyone should be entitled to their due process. I mean, they
that's
should.
right.
And you need to verify. You can't just like grab people and just send them wherever. And it's kind of interesting because our immigration system has never worked that way. If immigrants are caught and they are deported, they're supposed to be deported to their country of origin, not
That's right. That's right.
some
Not
other
to another jail in another
yeah.
country. Yeah. Or like he had an order, right, that said, don't deport him there because his life will be in jeopardy. And they
Hmm.
still did it. God, it's just inhumane. But that's the way they treated people like us. Now we're seeing it. We're seeing that face, that evil face. It's showing itself. And we know it centers upon the core group, which is a white group, right? And there's a whole history to that too. But the importance of the Chicano movement is that it represents a name that connects us to our indigenous roots, Mexico,
Hmm.
which really the pronunciation of Mexico is Mexico, right?
Right.
Because the X is sh, right?
Hmm.
Chico. If you
Hmm.
say Mexicanos, you're saying Mexicanos,
Hmm.
Mexicanos. So it makes us remember our cultural roots. And also, it's a self-determined name that we developed on our own, right, as a group, and also uh, it, uh, it reminds us of resistance, you know, and that's so important, so important.
Absolutely. How does the Chicano identity differ from broader Latino or Hispanic identities? And there's over 20, for everyone who's watching or listening, there's over 23 Latin speaking countries with their own cultures and their own dialects, I would call them, that speak Spanish. So, how is it differ?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question because the term Latino is comes from the farms in South America and Mexico, where they call landowners landinos, right? So it's a connection to that again, the oppressed system, and so Latinos, and then Latin, of course, has to do with more Italian blood, the hot-blooded people,
Hmm.
and those really aren't our nomenclatures that we should follow, right? Because they're developed by the colonial system, right?
Right.
And then Hispanic, well, we used to say, "Why panic?" Don't panic. We're here. Don't look around. We're okay. We'll
Yeah.
treat you good. We'll
Yeah.
feed you tacos and tortillas.
Yeah.
But Hispanic was coined by Richard Nixon
Hmm.
because he wanted to get us connected to the yoke of
Hmm.
the Spanish, invasion with them.
Hmm.
My dad used to call them our primos, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, because he has Spanish blood, just
Right.
like I have Spanish blood. I'm mestizo,
Hmm.
but to to inculcate that into us is that what you are, that's what you are and only are. It's not true because I'm 56% indigenous.
Hmm.
I have the First Nations blood in me. Ancestry.com proved that for me.
Oh,
Well, the
good.
percentage the amount, right?
Hmm.
I also have a lot Portuguese, Spanish, 21% Spanish, 10% Portuguese,
Hmm.
and I relate to them as human beings. I've been on vacation to
Hmm.
several countries, and I meet Portuguese people, and we have great time. We talk, and the
Nice.
Italians were alike. But what I'm saying is that Hispanic, it waters us down, and it makes us believe that we're like them, but we're not. We're separate, really, politically. Humanly, I think we're together. But when you bring
Yes.
the geopolitics in, it separates us. And you can even separate that with skin tone. It's better if you're light skinned and call yourself Latin, and people say, "Oh, well, you're acceptable," right?
Mm.
Westminster versus Menendez proved
Hmm.
that in L.A. before Brown and the Board of Education, they had Westminster.
Hmm.
That came first, and there was a whole thing of segregation. It was a Puerto Rican family and a Mexican family. They had intermarried. One family, they said, "You go to that school," and it had broken water drinking fountains, no lawn on the grass, and it was just in poor shape in LA. And then the other light skinned family, they said, "You go to that school, you're more acceptable." And they went to that school, right?
Right.
And they wondered why. They go, "Why do were they sent there?" "Oh, because we're brown," right? And it was a color thing. So they went and they found attorneys, and they won their case
Hmm.
that they were unlawfully segregated by color. Which is Brown versus the Board of Education too for in the South with blacks. They were doing the same thing, and so those terms really water us down. It's like when I hear the word Latino, it's like saying calling blacks Negroes. What they used to be called, or
Right.
when I hear the word Hispanic, it's like trying to water down the blood to me, and I don't think that's good. And I think blacks have chosen to be called black or African American. There's a
Hmm.
big discourse between those two groups too. And I think groups need to be self-determined as to what they're going to call themselves, and what individuals call themselves doesn't matter anyway. As Corky Gonzalez says in his poem "I Am Joaquin,"
Hmm.
you can call yourself whatever you want, but we're all the same. You know, we're
And
all
that
under that umbrella. Yeah.
that's beautiful. What role does art and literature play in shaping Chicano cultural experience and
A lot,
expression?
a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
Cheech Marine just opened the Riverside Chicano Museum. I don't know if
No,
you've heard about it,
no,
but
but
he
thank you.
did. Yeah, I haven't gone yet. I got to
Hmm.
go. It's been
Hmm.
open for a couple of years now. And I've always been interested in Chicano art. I lived in San Francisco and Fresno and LA, and and I'm close to Oakland now, and I'm here close to where the Royal Chicano Air Force used to be, which is a big Chicano group that got together and did posters for the movement for Cesar Chavez, for
Mhm.
Boycott and Great and all that. It plays, you know, and really where they got their inspiration was from Mexico, from the roots, from their
Mhm.
culture. During the '60s, they sent a whole like a brigade of Chicanos into Mexico, right? Into Oaxaca, into Mexico City, into Cuernavaca, and areas that people were had never heard about, just to look at what were the artisans doing, what were the artists doing, what were the well-known artists doing, like Diego Rivera and his wife. Um, um, what's his wife's name? Oh my gosh, she was better than him though.
Yeah.
Gee, I'm
Yeah.
brain farts right
Brain
now.
fog, brain fog.
Yeah,
It
brain fog
happens.
all the
But
way.
it's
Yeah,
it's so interesting. I feel that there's so many new immigrants and from different Latin American countries. I feel like one of the first stops, and I know everyone works or whatnot, but I think that the Chicano history is so important for
it
other
is.
Latinos to learn because they come from another country and they have no idea about the past struggles that Chicanos have had, and that thanks to the movements and the civil rights movements of Chicanos, that has kind of helped pave the way, I feel, in my opinion, for other groups, from other countries, Ecuador
No, it's
and El Salvador and
mhm.
Puerto Rico, and well, my parents are from Uruguay in South
Are
America.
they Uruguay? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, it is because we're one of the same people. Octavio Paz and Jose Vasconcelos said, if you tear down the borders, we're all the same. And the truth is that before the Europeans came, there was massive trading from
Hmm.
the ombligo they call Mexico City outward to the North America, up to Canada, at the West Coast, Arizona. There's a place in New Mexico where it's called Atzatzlan or Atzlan, yeah, Atzlan, and Montezuma himself. And the name of the artist was Frida Kahlo. Okay, just a little Frida Kahlo, right?
Frida Kahlo.
He
Hmm.
used to come all the way with his his posse,
Hmm.
carrying him in those kind of like cars, all the way to near Albuquerque to Summer in the land of enchantment, which was New Mexico. Chilenos were trading jade, Puerto Ricans, Tainos were trading with the Mexicans.
Hmm.
Mexicans were trading with them with their products that they had. There was just a massive, and then what they say and what they know now is that Mexico City, Teotihuacan, Tenochtitlan was a very diverse, there was Ecuadorian tribes, there was Bolivian tribes, there was tribes from Chile, that had come up to share ideas, to share artisanal things, concepts, ideas, astrology,
Hmm.
there in Mexico City. And some stayed, some liked it so much that, we'll stay here. So it's a very diverse culture in Mexico City. So, it is bigger than just Chicano literature.
Hmm.
It is. It's a form of identity. Uh, I remember I used to say, even to the black baseball players, because they had Mexican last names, it was Pedro,
Hmm.
Pedro Sosa or Pedro Martinez. And I tell my dad, those are Chicanos. And he goes, no, they're not. Those are black men. I go, yeah, but they have names like us. They're
Hmm.
like us, right? And, yeah, but they're from Dominican. I go, they're like us, Dad. I read, I read Dominican literature, I read South
Hmm.
American literature, and I just immediately connect to it.
Hmm.
The
Absolutely.
division is not even there unless you fly a flag and say this is what I am and kiss that flag and are totally nationalistic, which is
Right.
a big mistake.
Hmm.
But yeah, it creeps into each other, overlays, and the history, of course, overlays into one another. So yeah, these groups can learn a lot. I had students that
Hmm.
that were Italian,
Hmm.
and what I did is an experiment, and they loved my Chicano lit class. I had black students, I had
Hmm.
white students, from all cultures. And I challenged them to take my 1B and 1A class in the community college, the 1B or 1D, because they center around critical thinking. And I center all my core studies on identity. And for the Mexican Americans, I had like girls who talk like valley girls in Mexico. They
Mm-hmm.
would totally find themselves. They'd be like, "Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what I was,
Mm-hmm.
but now I connect." And to my white students, I say, "Well, look at your ancestry. It's very important. Look at your self-identity. Find out where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
There's really human beings don't have a large division. Let's say place themselves again politically and ally themselves with somebody that says, well, you're lesser than, right? But we broke those barriers down in our classes, and those who survived the class, they learned a whole lot. They made videos and were like really thankful about their course of study because they understood now what it meant to look at not only themselves but look at literature. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because a lot of literature, you read Melville, and you understand that it's really about white supremacy. The great white
Mm-hmm.
whale. And you get an understanding of how men worked in that industry, just like they worked in the farms here. They were doing both, and their lives were at risk,
Mm-hmm.
just like everywhere else. So we're I like what Maya Angelou says. We're more alike than unalike. You know.
How do issues of immigration, well, right now there's a whole bunch of issues with immigration, how they intersect with Chicano identity and activism?
Yeah, it does. In fact, about 20 years ago, when this whole thing, well, even when Reagan, that was further back, maybe 40 years ago, when Reagan began to create the United States IRCA, Immigration Reform Control Act, uh, we began to see resistance from those groups, that are recent arrivals. But he made them U.S. citizens, right? After Bush, uh, a new group came about called the Dreamers, right? They really carry the flag of resistance now. In the 60s, those Chicanos, it was Ecuadorians, South Americans, people who identified Guatemalans with the movement because they were the same as us, joined the movement. And of course, African Americans said, we're one in the same fight. We're part of
Mm-hmm.
the same fight. Uh, Joined it, and it was student moved, right? Now we're finding the Dreamers are also students, but they have the immigration, right, issue to deal with, which this country does not want to give them legal status,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a danger to it for them, because you give them legal, then the voting, we the Democrats, they tend to go more Democrat, um, uh, then have an edge over them, right? And that's what they don't want, and that's why there's so much resistance to them. But immigration has always tied in, with us. When they want us here. The Bracero Act. My dad was a
Yes.
Bracero.
Mm-hmm.
Over 2 million, maybe up to 4 million, were brought in
Mm-hmm.
to work the agricultural fields in the 40s during World War II. My dad came in 1943 or four, and was part of the Bracero movement. And so they want us here. Then when they decide we don't want you, then
Mm-hmm.
they raid us here. Because soon after that, they began to raid people in California nationwide and began to expatriate them back to Mexico. And this kind of gaming of us, you know,
Mm-hmm.
now what's happened is become an industry. You know, the border now is a big industrial war machine. That they have weaponized, and people benefit from that. Corporations benefit from building up a military force along the border, and then calling it ICE.
Right.
So it has always been uh, an issue, immigration, uh, since of course we become colonized. But what we say as Chicanos is that we didn't cross the border crossed us,
I've heard
right?
that, and it's true. And
Have you?
it's very interesting. I've heard it, and it's very true that it's not taught in mainstream education
No, it's not. I teach it.
at all.
I
Yeah.
taught it.
So
Dolores Huerta says it. Yeah.
yeah. So talking about education, what are the challenges and opportunities of teaching Chicano studies in today's educational climate?
It's needed more than ever. In California, they passed legislation about, I would say, about 5 years ago, where they had to in high schools incorporate ethnic studies, a form of ethnic studies, or California studies, which looks at all peoples, right? And so now you have in high schools in California ethnic studies departments. That went into the community college level. As I was leaving, they were building the ethnic studies program on our campus, and now I've been gone for about 3 years now,
Hmm.
and now it's total. They have a dean that is ethnic studies teacher. They have a Chicano history and literature segment. They hire professors in that. They have an Asian one. They have a black one, and etc. And it's really, really powerful and strong. The speakers they bring in are so important. So those programs were almost taken away, right? After I left college, there was a movement to kind of pasteurize them into regular courses, but those divisions, like the history division, didn't want them. So what would happen is that they just die, right? My Chicano Day course, like for example, on my campus survived because a group of Chicanos here in Stockton, California, said you cannot take this away. So they put it in the English department, right? And there was still this thing as a feeling of you're the stepchild of English, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, we our literature is older than yours, right? You
Yeah.
know, and there was this feeling of I had a librarian tell me, "Don't dumb
Uh-huh.
down the class." I go,
Right.
"Why would I do that?" You know,
Hmm.
uh, and then she asked me I was writing curriculum. She said, "So, where are you looking to find all your historical documents?" And I told her what I told you at the beginning,
Hmm.
Tomas Ibarra, and there's Anthol, but I said there's not a whole lot.
Right.
I wish there was more, but there's not. She tried to look and she couldn't find it. And I'm like,
S-
I'm telling you, I've been there,
So
but
you
it's
think that,
go ahead.
pardon. So you think
That's
that
all right.
in some ways the Chicano voices have been excluded or co-opted in the mainstream political discourse?
I think politically, there are groups that are doing dynamic jobs.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a political consortium in Washington D.C. that really is doing a great job. But I think when it comes to addressing us, nobody's really doing it except them.
Hmm.
There are also groups in communities like Mexican American Political Associations and LULAC, which is very old, and United Latin American Citizens that do a great job, but they tend to be more conformist, right?
Hmm.
Let's not rock the boat too much. Let's not lose our funding. Let's not, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we had groups up and coming in the '60s, but those were right away taken apart.
Wow.
Uh, and people have always questioned. Well, if they were, especially this question to liberals, is if you don't allow, right, uh, particular things, like language, right, being used for particular people or whatever it may be. Why is it that the Ku Klux Klan still gets to have a seat in
Hmm.
Washington D.C.?
Hmm.
We're seeing that now.
Yes.
It's in our face now.
Hmm.
And why is that? Why weren't they like the Black Panthers and the Yellow Sea Deation and the Brown Berets? Why weren't they squelched? Right? Well, there's a reason for that, right?
Hmm.
And it has to do with equality, political power, the whole thing of equity. One group wants to be on top all the time. That's what it is. And
Yep.
yeah, and so yeah, yeah. I hope I answered your question on that one.
Absolutely did. If you could go back, right? Go back in time and talk to your younger self, just beginning in this field, what would you say?
That's a good one. I'd say stay the course.
Yeah,
You
right?
know, let that great spirit guide you.
Yeah. And lastly,
And
we're coming into the end of
okay,
the interview here, but what do you hope listeners take away from understanding Chicano studies and its relevance today? They can take
Uh,
away one point.
Number one is that it's canonized. Number two, that it reflects what America is. Almost all the great food we eat comes from our tables. It used to be potato chips on top, now it's tortilla chips. Used to be hamburgers, now it's tacos, right?
Mhm.
It used to be what else? Other hot dogs, and now it's churros,
I love
that are number
churros.
one. Yeah,
We have those too.
there
We
you
have
have those.
churros
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're good. I love them too, man. Now they make these ones with chocolate in them, right?
Yeah.
But our culture is alive and it's well,
Mhm.
and it really has inculcated. Anytime you have a community event that connects to us, right? What you will see is people giving and people really celebrating life, and people who are very spiritual.
Mhm.
I think people need to understand that Chicano literature is interesting, it's innovative, and it's stories that you never heard before. And I think I heard uh, a San Francisco Chronicle reporter. He gave a symposium for a project that I used to be a part of called Puente. It's an educational project in our community colleges here and high school. And what he said is that Chicano literature it's really popular. And I'm like, well, how? And he says, well, these women who read these romance stories and read these novels, they get tired of the same old thing. They look for other literature and they find Chicano literature